Good morning and welcome to Into the Terminal, episode 6. This is our Jumpstart week, helping you get jump-started on all of your Red Hat Enterprise Linux needs. I'm Eric, the IT guy Hendricks, and joining me is Mr. Scott McBrien.
Good morning, Eric.
All right, so you want to tell folks what we're talking about today?
Yeah, what we just brought up here was a look at the Red Hat customer portal, which is generally where you start for things at Red Hat. But I think we wanted to cover something a little bit before this too, which is registering for a subscription. So this
Yep.
is where you go if you already have subscriptions. But we're going to start by how do you get a subscription?
Yeah, this week is all about starting from ground zero. How do you get from I know how to spell Red Hat to actually running Red Hat Enterprise Linux, either a virtual machine or a cloud environment? So we're going to cover couple of different approaches to get there this week. So if you are brand new to Red Hat or Linux or RHEL, this is the perfect episode to start. So with that said, let's dive on in. And so what Scott was alluding to was a program that Red Hat has had for years for Red Hat Enterprise Linux. It's been known by different names. But it's more or less been the same over what 15 or so years, I think.
Uh, I mean, it's gone through fits and starts of changing, but it's a
Right.
program called the Developers Program that's geared towards people who write software or build stuff on Red Hat Enterprise Linux or other Red Hat products.
It's unfortunately a well kept secret here at Red Hat because I didn't know this existed through the entirety of my time as a systems administrator. So if you find this useful, please tell a friend because this is an amazing program. What it gives you is up to 16 licenses to run Red Hat Enterprise Linux as an individual. There's some other caveats and there's some terms and conditions that we won't dive into today. We'll include some links in the show notes for the specifics. But just know that if you are an individual with a home lab, the Red Hat developer subscription is amazing. Um, so what this is going to do is not only set us up with a license, but it's also going to register us an account on Red Hat Access. Um, so, Scott, do you want to create us an account here? Or do we want to
Uh,
just walk through the sheet and then log in?
yeah, I think it's more just walk through the sheet and pretend like we did it, and then log into it. Right. So a Red Hat login is the um, username credential that you use when logging into things like the Red Hat customer portal or the Red Hat www.redhat.com if you're doing authenticated stuff. Your email address that's going to be tied to your account, what you do, and then you set a password. And then the bottom parts here is I've read the terms and conditions, and if you'd like to opt in to getting additional email. And as Eric said, what this will do is it will allocate for you a um, not only a Red Hat user credential for using for things like the customer portal, but will allocate that developer subscription to your account, which gives you up to 16 RHEL systems to use at your leisure.
And we'll make sure that the developer's URL is included in the show notes, but it's here in the chat if you want to sign up and play along. So one of the
So,
cool things about the customer portal is about every time I come here, find something new. There's news, there's events, there's links to different discussions, and then we'll get into some of the more beefy things like the subscriptions and downloads. But I stepped over what you were going to say there, Scott.
I was just going to say, let's assume that we got our developer subscription and we can just log into the customer portal now.
All right, let's go ahead and get logged in. You want to show everyone your password while you're at it, and
Yeah, let me just do that.
we'll just hand out your credentials.
All right, so once we've authenticated, you can see that up here in the um, upper right hand corner, we get a little bit of information about the account that I created and even some helpful links like getting started or putting in some profile management stuff. Um, but Eric, we wanted to jump to downloads, right?
Right. So top of the episode, we want to focus on kind of the critical path. So we've got ourselves a subscription, we got ourselves an account. Now we can go up to downloads to get the actual Red Hat Enterprise Linux ISO. At the time of this recording, Red Hat Enterprise Linux 8 is the current major version. RHEL 9 is in beta, but the process will be the same no matter what major version you're using. You'll just have to go to a slightly different place to find the ISO. Like there's a link right at the top for RHEL 8, or there's a link to RHEL 7 and below. But today, we're going to go ahead and grab the latest major version. That's Red Hat Enterprise Linux 8. RHEL 9 will probably take its place here in just a couple of months, so that process shouldn't change at all. So it's going to verify that we have our credentials, make sure that we're logged in, and then it's going to drop us onto a page that has some product resources, some links to documentation, some information about the RHEL lifecycle, and one of my favorite links right there is the ability to contact support. So if you get the ISO downloaded and something breaks right out of the gate, you know exactly where to go to open a ticket. Then if we scroll down a little bit further into the product software section of the page, you'll see a number of different ISOs. There's a boot ISO, which is very, very minimal. You can actually download a QCOW2 guest image. So if you want to just download and run, say, libvirt or I believe there's a couple of options for Windows and Mac OS to run QCOW2, but for the most part, that's for libvirt. So you can download a pre-installed version. So there's a couple of different guest images there, some driver update disks, some supplementary packages. But all the way back up at the top is the one that we want to download today, and that is the RHEL 8 binary DVD. That's got all the packages built into an ISO, so you can download the ISO, and if you have a server that maybe has a disk drive still, you can burn that ISO to a DVD, or like most of us are probably doing at this point, upload the ISO to a hypervisor or down to your local laptop. So if we go ahead and click on that download, it is about 10.2 gigs. Which is a lot better than it used to be, but that is all of the packages. That's all the things. So you don't really need an internet connection to get RHEL installed. There's some caveats doing a disconnected install, but more or less with that DVD and a virtual machine, that's really all you need. That's really all you need to get started.
So, and I was going to point this out as well, Eric, that 10 gigs won't fit on a DVD since they are 8 gigs.
That's a good point.
Our installer does not support multiple DVDs. So really, you're pulling this ISO down and you're going to use it as a ISO file rather than actually recording it onto an optical device. If you had to do an optical device-based install, something like the boot ISO might be a different option for you. But that's going to complicate your install because there's no packages on it. So that's like an asset that will get you into the RHEL installer, but then you're going to have to provide a link or something to go to where the actual packages are stored.
Actually, Luna, you mentioned a USB stick, and that's not a joke. You can actually burn these images to a jump drive or some kind of flash drive and use that. I know back in my systems administration days, I actually had like 5 or 6 of our current image onto USB sticks. So if I had a day where we'd provision some new hardware, I can actually just go and plug in a bunch of USB sticks into a stack of servers, and apparently punch my microphone. But I could just stick 5 or 6 USB sticks into 5 or 6 servers and bring over the crash card and just throw in my headphones and just start installing RHEL. Thankfully, there's a bunch of more advanced tasks that we can do today to more automate that. But back in the day, that's what I had to do.
Hey, Eric, I noticed underneath the asset type, there's also a SHA-256 checksum. What's that about?
Oh, that's a great point. So a lot of different news outlets have surfaced this term of software bill of materials, and so that's kind of like these are the parts that I need. These are the parts that I need to actually build the software that I'm using. It's kind of likened to a construction term. What the SHA-256 checksum does is all of these downloads are signed by Red Hat systems. So what that means is they've been scanned, they've been verified, and we can relative with relative confidence say that we've got that everything that every byte of code that's in, say, this ISO file is written by us. It does what it's intended. So it's essentially, we're signing off on it, saying this is Red Hat software. This is okay to use if you're expecting something from Red Hat. So what that checksum is basically a signature verification. It compares the signature on the ISO to the checksum file and basically says that yeah, these things are the same. It's signed by who it's claimed to be signed. If you watched our SSH episode, think of this very much along the same lines as authenticating with an SSH key.
Yeah, and in this method of using checksums, right? We're checking for two things. One, like Eric pointed out, we're checking for authenticity, right? So if you pull it down and you check the checksum and it doesn't match this value, then something in that ISO is not accurate, right? It was modified, and that could be because you downloaded it from somewhere weird, like a file sharing site instead of directly from the Reddit customer portal. But the reason that we're providing it is not only to protect against that, but also so that you can see if maybe it was corrupted as part of your download, right? Because it's a long period of time with a lot of data in it. And if there's an internet hiccup somewhere along the lines, it can corrupt your download and that can cause you problems when you try to install your boxes off of that software later. So yeah, you want to make sure that you've got the right checksum of content before you carry forward with this downloaded ISO.
That's a great point. Yeah, my mind always seems to go to security. So even though it's more the operational perspective that I tend to focus on. Okay, so I think we've beat the software download page into submission. So I highly encourage you, if you're listening at home, to play along with us. So before tomorrow's episode is going to be about installation. So make sure you have that ISO downloaded ahead of time. We're going to pretend like it's downloading in the background. That way it's ready for tomorrow's episode. But we wanted to dive into just a couple of other things. So let's back up to the subscriptions tab there at the top. We mentioned that we signed up for a developer subscription. So this is where we can actually go in. Go ahead.
So remember, we were just like pretending to sign up as a developer. Well, it turns out the account that we're using has a bit more than a developer subscription.
And sometimes re-authenticating takes a few seconds. There's nothing like a long authentication wait while you're doing a live stream, but yeah, there's a few extra things here that's part of our subscriptions in this account. You probably won't have 12,000 active subscriptions on yours. So there's a few pieces of important data here at the top. One thing that RHEL and Red Hat are really good about is having dashboards or quick links right at the top, making it very easy to get the information that you need without having to dig through a bunch of different menus to get there. So while the other two panes are loading, the subscriptions tells us how many subs we actually have, whether that's RHEL or Satellite or some of the others. It tells you that there's subscriptions that are preparing to expire, to let you know that, hey, you need to go and make sure that these are set for renewal. And then as we scroll down a little bit further, there's an actual breakdown of the different subscriptions. And in the RHEL section, there is the RHEL developer subscription for individuals. You'll notice that we have one of those, and that we're currently using 0% of our entitlement usage. So if you have 10 RHEL, let's break it down. Developer includes 16 licenses, so if we're using 4 of those, then we'd see that, I should have picked an easier number, but what, 20% of those are used, 25%? I can math and talk at the same time. Said no one ever. And then you'll notice that actually Scott needs to go out and make sure that his developer subscription is ready to renew, because that's going to expire early next month. So you'll notice that shows up in red. Also worth noting here, we won't go into any depth, but I wanted to point out that the Red Hat Beta Access program has changed this year. So it's available to anyone. So if you have an account, you get RHEL beta access. So you can actually go in and download RHEL 9 beta right now and kind of kick the tires on that.
Yeah, and if we had gone through the motions that we claimed to have earlier in the episode to set bases, I would have expected that looking at the subscriptions, I just see that one line item for Red Hat Developer subscription for individuals. Um, but I'm using an account that we use for a lot of demonstration purposes here at Red Hat. So I've got a variety of subscriptions. So if you were in an organization where you were an administrator and you were logging into your organizational Red Hat account that has paid subscriptions, it would be more like what you see here. So we're told kind of when the what the subscription is for, the quantity that we have, and then the next renewal field is the when it will come up for renewal. So uh, I think the ones that we're interested in would be this RHEL Enterprise Linux Server section down here. So I've got 6,000 entitlements, space for up to 6,000 machines. There's some weirdness that happens when you're entitling servers that have a lot of compute hardware, where they can use more than one subscription based off how much compute hardware they have. So this subscription also has some Ansible subscriptions, or sorry, this account rather has some Ansible subscriptions. It also has extended update support and some HA add-on stuff and satellite.
One of the nice things about this screen is it may look a little bit complex for our developer example that we're going through this week, but the nice thing is this is actually visible to the organization level. So we created an individual account, but if we were to create an account as part of an organization that is a Red Hat subscriber, we'd actually be able to look at the entitlements for the entire enterprise, assuming that you have some kind of account administration privileges within your organization. But if you're a systems administrator and you have a satellite server and you've got an Ansible automation platform server, and then you've got thousands of RHEL instances, you can come to the same place and verify all of your subscriptions all in the same place. So that gives you a great high level view. But for our sake, if you're just creating a developer account, that's Red Hat Enterprise Linux Server entitlement is probably the only one that you really need to be worried about. So back up to the top, the other couple of panes have loaded. So we've kind of dug into the subscriptions parts. There's also a systems section that tells you how many physical systems, how many virtual systems, and how many hypervisors you have registered. So there's different SKUs that tie to those different versions of RHEL, but that just gives you a quick breakdown of how many systems do I actually have registered. So if you know you're only running 100, but you've got like 400 subscriptions registered or systems registered, you should probably a good idea to go in and prune those out to make sure you're not paying for more than you're using. Obviously, the developer subscription is a free subscription that renews every year. But if you're using this in an enterprise or in a for-profit company, that's good information to have. And Scott, do you want to talk about that last pane there? This one, I love the fact that that's here.
Oh, you're talking about the errata pane?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so essentially what it's showing is across our entire population of registered servers, how many outstanding security advisories, bug fixes, and feature enhancements are outstanding. So when Red Hat puts together an errata, which is an updated RPM package, we will classify it as one of these three things. Either it's to fix a security problem or mitigate a security vulnerability, it is to fix a bug, or it is to add new features to the product. And so this is just saying across my entire population, this is what's outstanding. And just a teaser for a later episode, this is also surfaced in the Red Hat Insights product in a lot more detail. So if you're interested in doing population management, check out that episode when we film it.
I'm not sure exactly where that one lands in our schedule, but it is upcoming. I think it's before the end of the month. But what I really get excited about is that even if I'm in here managing my subscriptions and registering servers, I can get a quick look at, oh my gosh, this jumped from yesterday to today by hundreds. So there must be something very important that is impacting my environment. So I can go in and very quickly just get just a quick pulse, one ping only, and see how my population is doing, and if that number is increasing over the course of a couple of days, then that's a good clue that something's going on. And this shows up like in the web console. This shows up in insights. This shows up here in subscriptions. So there's a security health check similar to this that's kind of embedded in some of the different tools, so that no matter where I'm at, I can usually be within just a couple of clicks of telling the overall health of my environment. So Scott, you're our container guy. Do you want to mention the containers tab before we move to support?
Good question. I don't think I've ever clicked on the containers tab. Oh, it goes to the containers, um, the container portal, where we can look at all of the containers that Red Hat produces and maintains, and that includes things like our universal base image, which is a freely redistributable RHEL-based container image.
So yeah, that leads you to all of the Red Hat built and maintained container packages. So I think we've got a number of the different databases, some of the different web servers prepackaged in a RHEL-based container. So if you're interested in the container side of things, that's definitely a great place to go. And as Scott mentioned, one of my favorites is the UBI container, which is just basically a RHEL in a container, which is a great place to play around with building applications in a container, or even just playing with RHEL. It's kind of interesting to do like systems administration tasks from the UBI container. Yes, I've done this because I don't know, maybe I like pain, but just trying to do different troubleshooting tasks. Because it builds good muscle memory between I want to do like a dig or something for DNS, and okay, so that command doesn't exist, so how do I go about finding it? So it's an interesting learning exercise that doesn't involve you to like recompile RHEL from scratch. So the last major tab up at the top is support cases. And if you're new to RHEL, or if you're trying to push the limits of your operating system, this is probably a good place to jump to know where to find, just because this allows you to very quickly open support cases, upload log files. Of course, when I was prepping for this episode, it took like 5 minutes to populate that pane, so I'm glad it didn't take that long. But it allows us to filter our open cases by products, by severity. It allows us to open up a case up in the top right-hand corner. There's various levels of support that you can actually execute via chat. I'm sure there's some limitations as to how much you can go through with the chat function. To be honest, I don't know that I ever opened a case with chat when I was a systems administrator, but
So I have done that. Um,
okay.
so um, basically, if you chat with support, they'll do some basic troubleshooting to try and catch those kind of easy to diagnose issues. But if it goes beyond a kind of pile that they have is easy to diagnose, then the chat support agent will work to open a case for that issue so that it can be worked further by another technical support engineer. The other thing I'd like to point out is we've been talking under this premise of developer subscription. Well, developer subscriptions are self-supported subscriptions. So developer subscriptions, if that's the model you're operating under, you would not be able to open support cases because you're a self-support with developer subscriptions. So this is for standard or premium subscriptions for RHEL.
Although I hope I don't have to put my foot in my mouth here, but if I'm not mistaken, the developer subscription does give you access to the Red Hat knowledge base.
Correct. So basically, you're given access to the customer portal with developer subscription. And because you have a subscription, you get all kinds of benefits that Red Hat reserves for subscribers, like unlocking all of the articles in the knowledge base instead of just the free ones. Um, but when it comes over to opening support cases, I don't remember if that button is just not shown or if it's grayed out or something like that. But this is a part of the the customer portal that as a self-support customer you would not see. But we can work on opening a case here, and it'll ask us a bunch of questions. Right, so it starts to just kind of gather what product are we using, what version of that product are we using. So let's say it's RHEL, and we're on the latest, right? And it will, based off of our experience, we'll kind of pre-populate some things of like, hey, have you tried? Is it one of these things? So maybe it's containers, and then it gives you some top resolved issues that we've already figured out. And so if it's one of these, you can go to a knowledge base article and get some further diagnosis. But if it's not any of these, then you just click continue. And then it asks you to be a little bit more specific in your problem. And at this point, I'm going to stop because I don't want to actually open a case and have our support engineers all like try to triage it and other stuff when it's not real, right? But it would go into the support organization who would then try to get some additional details and work it through to its completion.
So we've covered subscriptions. We've covered how to get a subscription. We've covered product downloads and a couple of the different versions that are available. We talked about support and I hope we didn't undersell the knowledge base articles because there are tons. Some of them are written as an extension to some of our documentation. There's others that are written as, hey, we at the support organization see this issue pop up frequently on these versions of RHEL. So if you follow these steps, you can use a workaround, or this is how we fix this particular issue. So there's literally thousands of articles in the knowledge base. It's really helpful, and to be honest, since coming to Red Hat full time, I think I think the knowledge base is one of the go-to places I go, even before Google nowadays. Although, funny enough, if you do a Google search for a particular error message, a lot of times the knowledge base is one of the first things to pop up in the results. So we're coming to the bottom of the episode here, and I wanted to point out that we've kind of mentioned in passing, but the customer portal is also where you can go to get product documentation, and the docs are amazing. They give you very direct approaches to how do I set up a user, how do I create a disk partition. And then we've got off the main website is the Red Hat blog, which has say more color commentary based around some of the documentation. So if I want to create a disk partition, I can use the documentation. But if I'm trying to build a specific type of server, a specific type of image, maybe deploying MariaDB via a container. There's blogs available to go and see how to do those things. I think Scott, you had one other note before we wrap today.
Oh, yeah, I just wanted to quickly talk about product documentation. So I'm sure we could find it here if we clicked around enough, but I like going to the direct site, which is redhat.com/docs. And that'll take us to the documentation content. It starts by asking you what product you're interested in. So for us, that's going to be Red Hat Enterprise Linux. Maybe I can find it. They recently changed this a little bit, so that's fun.
It's much cleaner now, though, but I can't find anything without doing a search. It looks great.
Oh, there it is. Found it. It's under E for Enterprise Linux, I guess.
Oh,
And then you hit documentation, and then there's like categories underneath of that for different documents. But we do maintain a pretty large number of documents that go through things like doing installations, or the security guide is one of my favorites because it talks about making changes and supporting stuff for a better, more hardened footprint of your Red Hat Enterprise Linux systems, and so forth.
Uh, and expanding upon that, our technical documentation is good, even great. But one thing I do get excited about is the planning section. So like there was an article for considerations, or there was a documentation link for considerations in adopting Red Hat Enterprise Linux 9. So our engineers put a lot of thought into those parts of the documentation, so that it's not just type this command, use this argument, and now you have a thing. But there's also some higher level documents in there that talk about how, or less the how and more the why of doing a particular task.
Yeah, and then the other thing that goes in there is release notes. So on Eric's other show, Red Hat Enterprise Linux Presents, we talked some about Red Hat Enterprise Linux 9, and we were talking about some of the things that have been deprecated in Red Hat Enterprise Linux 9. And that's where we found that information, was the release notes.
Yep, that's a great point, and a perfect chance for me to slip in a shameless plug of join us a week from Wednesday for Red Hat Enterprise Linux Presents, I think episode 33, because we are going to actually interview Matthew Miller from the Fedora project. So you won't want to miss that. That'll be a great episode. Talks a lot about the Fedora community and how that feeds into what we're talking about here on this show under Red Hat Enterprise Linux. And I think the last note we wanted to share was in the customer portal, you can actually search for packages. It's a little bit deeper than we wanted to go today, but just know that that's there. If you want to give release notes or look at different versions of packages, package dependencies, but you don't want to do it from the command line, there is basically a big search page where you can go in and look at the different versions of RPMs or packages.
And last note, Eric, don't forget to like, subscribe, share. I think I went the
To
wrong direction on that one.
It's a good thing we're better at administering Red Hat Enterprise Linux systems than we are doing live streams. But yeah, definitely please like, subscribe, share, all the things. We've gotten some great feedback. We've made some tweaks to the episode to the episode format from the feedback. So I really do appreciate it. And as a few folks can attest, we do tend to check the comments several times throughout the day. We've got a good conversation going on one episode about whether you want to install on bare metal or do a virtual machine for home learning usage. So check out those comments on our episode about, I think it was SSH. Anyway, join Scott tonight for Into the Terminal Dark Mode. We've officially branded that, so the After Hours episode is now called Dark Mode. So if you're like me and run everything in dark mode, you might want to join that episode. And then join us tomorrow for episode 7 already, day 2 of our Jumpstart week, where we're actually going to take the ISO that we pretended to download today, and we're going to actually install it on our virtual machine live on air. What could possibly go wrong with that?
Oh no, I downloaded that ISO, Eric. We'll see it again tomorrow.
Well, okay, so we got the ISO downloaded, but that was off the air. I'm waiting to see how this blows up in our face when we try and install a system live.
Fair.
All right, folks, thank you so much for joining us today. Join us tonight, join us tomorrow, and until then, good luck with good luck downloading your ISO, I guess. Although you're not live, so it'll probably work fine. All right, folks, thank you so much for joining us. We'll talk to you tomorrow.